let's make a start. It's 2 past the hour. Thanks everyone for joining and taking you through the topic of what's holding fund managers back in email marketing. So we'll cover this topic hopefully for the next 35 minutes. It's a live session. Feel free to fire questions out as and when you want to. I'll also run a session at the end to cover things. So a little bit about ProFundCom and what we're about. We've spent the last 20 years plus helping our clients raise assets through marketing automation. So what we do is we essentially take your CRM data, we take your fact sheets, your invitations, your investor portal, we take all the info, your website traffic, we bring it all together and really help you target people you should be raising money with. So essentially people that you should be raising money with and people potentially who may be looking to redeem. And we just take all those behaviors and present that to your sales team. So we really sit close to your CRM, but we're not your CRM. So essentially that's what we do. We've got over 400 users of our product. And the one thing we do on a regular basis as well, we release quarterly updates around digital marketing, around marketing automation, around tips about building templates, around how you can raise and preserve AUM through your digital marketing. That's really the world we live in. And, you know, we also produce an annual journal for how long, about how we see marketing in fund companies, whether they are hedge funds, PE, GPs, and the like, what we see as what's going to change and how we kind of backfill those trends with our technology. So our last report we ran, 5 major things came out of it, but the most important thing is 90% of people we surveyed were all around the biggest marketing challenge was generating high value leads, high quality, high value leads. And this in itself, you know, there are many aspects to this, but the common theme that everybody was doing email marketing. And essentially, because email marketing is one of those things you just do, nobody was really trying to get it any better. So things like websites, investor portal, everyone was spending time, energy, resource getting them better, but nobody really thought about how can we actually make our email marketing better. So what I did, I thought, right, let's find a way to put this all together in 35 minutes to just give you a checkbox, a tick box of where the challenges are and what can you quickly do, what can you do quickly probably too flippant a word, but how can you strategically plan your email campaign so it kind of ties into marketing automation. But you can't do any of marketing automation unless you've got a good, robust strategy for your email marketing. So we're going to break today's discussion into 4 sections. So first of all, I'm going to talk about the top email marketing challenges that fund managers, private equity, GPs face. We're going to look at compliance and segmentation and whether they're buzzwords, whether you need to care about them at all. Email delivery, I mean, that's kind of key, and how you manage spam filters and bots. And what actionable steps can you take at the end of this to say, right, there's a lot to digest, but what can I do quickly and economically and within budget so that I can actually have an impact, my marketing can have an impact on raising and preserving AUM. So the first thing is, okay, what are the challenges for fund marketing teams? So again, we went through this whole report and deliverability was a problem. Low engagement was a problem. Analytics, there were 2 problems with the analytics. One problem with the analytics was that opens and emails being opened, people clicking on links didn't really tell you much. And at the same time, there was nothing to deliver to the C-suite. There's no real way of building out dashboards. So that was a challenge. The other challenge was having CRMs that could send some emails, but couldn't do anything more than that. And the final challenge was content bottlenecks. So tackling deliverability and inbox placement. The way the challenges was how do our emails look in different email clients, Apple, Outlook, and the like? Again, one big challenge to deal with. And so clients were spending so much time creating great emails that just are dreadful in these other email clients. So one of the big things there was, how do you go about making sure your emails look great in different platforms? Now, our product does it, Email on Acid does it, Litmus does it, and what it effectively gives you the ability to do is gives you the ability to see what do my emails look like on different email clients and also different mobile devices. So that's kind of one of the challenges people were facing. And it was not one thing that you kind of felt the challenge, but didn't know how to solve it, so you kind of ignored it. The other thing was spam. So having the ability to know whether your emails are going to spam or not. And in many ways, as we go through this session, I'll be covering areas on how you stop your emails being seen as spam. But proactively, again, with those same tools, you've got the ability to see whether your emails are being picked up as spam by the various email providers. So they could be Postini, Gmail, Outlook, Symantec, all Cloudflare, all these kind of products that are out there, that their main goal is to stop your emails being delivered. Is how do you make sure they are being delivered, is having a proactive test. And again, Litmus, Email on Acid, we provide this technology. It's being able to have this. And it's no good just sending it to your Gmail account and thinking, oh, you know what, that's fine. It's actually more involved than that, because there's so many more components that go into that. The next thing to look at is, what does your email look like when it's being delivered? And that's also quite important, because most people now, and this is the thing, 89% of people, 83, 89% in that realm, are getting the first email touch on their mobile devices. And knowing that you can have 3 levels of text when an email is being delivered is actually really important for your inbox placement. Now, inbox placement is also now defined in as much as, are you seen in your main inbox? Are you seen in your promotions inbox? Are you seen in your other inbox? And in many ways, the way emails translate from being front of house to kind of percolating all the way down, that depends on how engaged people are. And that kind of was actually the next point of what I'm going to talk about as well. So low engagement, how do you deal with low engagement? Now, low engagement, I think a lot of it is, how are people reading your emails? How do they perceive you? How do they perceive, what makes your email clickable and you want people to open your emails? Now, there's lots of anecdotal evidence that sits out there, from subject line to images to color schemes that you use and the content that you use. And if you go on our website, we've actually listed out the best 5 email template designs to put together. But leaving that aside, there's subject line, there's fonts, there's where things lie in an email. Now, the way to actually subjectively work this out is to do some A/B testing. I mean, that kind of helps. But what we've been able to do, because we've got 23 years worth of data, having the ability to use an AI tool to basically go through your email, measure out how do your text and visuals sit, how do your links work, how's your typography in text, and what are the problems in there, and comparing your emails to a gold standard is incredibly useful. And a really good way to do this, if you don't use our tool, is to basically use Claude or ChatGPT and essentially upload an email template that's worked really well, then upload another email template that you're about to use, and essentially just ask ChatGPT or Claude to turn around and say, right, our first email template got a lot of engagement. This is the one we're about to send up. Can you suggest anything? And again, that is really, really useful. The challenge with that in fund marketing is that means your performance data is going to be consumed by OpenAI or the guys who run Claude. So there's a challenge in that, but you can anonymize it to a degree, or you can use this tool that we have. But that's not punting our tool, it's just the art of the possible. So what you're seeing here is that we've kind of gone through this, and we're actually saying your email is kind of okay. You've done 6 out of 11 best practices. There's one alert, and it actually tells you about the alert, and it's basically talking about font size and how potentially that could get picked up either by the spam filters, or would mean somebody would not really be that engaged with how the content's laid out. Again, very useful application of AI. You can do it with us, you can do it in ChatGPT, absolutely up to you. Again, you know, a lot of people do talk about, is your brand strong? Is your voice that you're using, does it resonate with your ideal investor? And I think the best way to measure, well, the best way to create your content is essentially making sure it's got the 3 E's in it. It's enlightening, it's enjoyable, and it's entertaining. And if you can kind of manage those as part of your email voice, I think that's pretty useful. And I do think what is also quite important with emails, and we ran a survey, and I think somebody else ran a survey about this, is the reason why email is here to stay is because you can essentially use your own filing to kind of put information in your own file structure, whether that's on SharePoint, whether that's in your data room, whether that's even in your Outlook folders. It allows that self-selection and that self-filing of data. So yes, investor portals are fantastic for that, for disseminating information, but for storage and self-indexing, there's really nothing that kind of beats email. So that's low engagement. So moving on to analytics, how do you define whether a campaign's done well and how has a campaign done badly? And then you can do that, open rates, and that's fine. But I'd challenge anybody, and there's about, let me have a quick, about 200 registered on this call right now. How many of you actually go past that? And the number is small. And it's not because people don't want to. One, you can't, there's no real way of comparing easily unless you're an Excel whiz. And there's also no way of creating dashboards. Now, what you can do is you can basically use a dashboard, and in this case, we're using Power BI, that essentially gives you a timeline and the ability to see how your campaigns are performing over time. And to take this a step further, you can essentially build a lot of these in your own Power BI if you've got Power BI. And I think if you're using or you can use Grow, or you can not Grow, Tableau. I think Grow does it as well, but you can essentially build these reports out yourself. And they are actually, and in this demo, you can actually see that it's actually all live data. So you can actually go and say, okay, which countries and which people are people engaging with us from? You've got the ability to do that. You've got to actually see, again, you can compare one campaign to another, how they're performing. You've got the ability to see, you know, what kind of ROI are you gaining month on month? Again, you've got to define what your ROI is. And you've then got the ability to drill down to see not only how your campaigns are performing, but also how individuals and how companies are engaging with you. And you can actually start building out a score for them. So essentially what's now happening, you're kind of moving away from, well, here are the open rates, to actually something to say, here are the people that are engaged with us, here are the companies that are engaged with us, here is the global reach of the people that are engaging with us. So again, very, very quickly, you've got the ability to view this data in these multiple dimensions. And I think what holds people back is learning that this data is available to them, and then feeding the appetite to say whether I actually want to learn a tool like Power BI. And the thing with Power BI, and this is the genius of YouTube, you know, somebody recently said the biggest invention to mankind after the bicycle and after the printing press is actually YouTube. And this report you've seen, dare I say it, most of it was built by me on a weekend. And there's a guy called Ken, I can't remember his surname, but he's the guy that just has a tutorial on YouTube, just shows you how quickly to pull this all together. So what stops people is a bit of fear, but actually once you understand how Power BI works, incredibly, incredibly useful. So that is analytics, right? Pulling analytics out, making sense of those analytics. Now, CRM marketing tools. CRMs were built to store data, and other tools were built to essentially take that data and do meaningful things with it. And interestingly, the founders of HubSpot, for example, started out as a marketing tool that became a CRM. So as people see the product today, they think, oh, it's CRM with marketing. But weirdly, it's not. And when I talk to people on this list over here, they all started out as CRM, and they haven't really engaged in becoming a true marketing tool. And that's reflected because recently Dakota ran, the 6 best email platforms for investment firms. Well, HubSpot, they use it as well. ProFundCom comes too. And that's because even though we're not a CRM, we just add a huge amount to the asset raising process, and all of that stuff is kind of inbuilt in our product. And the way it surfaces itself, and people do say, oh, do you mind coming being second to HubSpot? And I've got my line has always been, well, Avis does say that it's not good being second, but it hurts. So, take that, that's a dad joke, throw that in for you. So what you really want at the end of your CRM marketing automation journey is the ability to join up your CRM and your marketing tools. So you've got essentially a view for your sales team that allows them to know who are the people they should be calling. And we've built this out in our platform, and we call it the lead deck. You can build this out in Excel if you want to. Essentially what this does is telling the sales team, in this case, Sally, here's your low-hanging fruits. Here are your cross-selling opportunities, investors who are looking to invest more. Here's your redemption risk. Here are the people that are investors that are not engaging with you. Here's your marketing alpha. So marketing alpha being people who have not engaged with you for 6 months, but in the last month are engaging with you. And Audience Connect, a little more sophisticated. It just tracks a person's journey through your website, your investor portal, and your emails, and gives them a score to say, this person is engaged with you across multiple channels. So essentially, having a disjointed CRM and marketing tools is no surprise. Even, Salesforce, Pardot, that was a third-party product that they embedded. Now it's called Marketing Cloud. Marketo, exactly the same. Adobe, who bought them, that's exactly where they came from. IBM, Silverpop, no one is really building these out. So there is no surprise why CRM and these marketing tools are disjointed. And again, what's holding people back is the inability for budget to actually buy these additional marketing tools if it's not already embedded. And also finding out the marketing tools that come with the CRM don't give you the ability to do real marketing automation and generate that lead deck that I showed you earlier on. The other thing that fund marketing teams struggle with is content creation. And you have to say there's no better way to do this than using good old Excel. This is actually ProFundCom's content creation spreadsheet, and we just have all the tasks listed there, the monthly tasks, the quarterly task, and just done. It's shared, and it's a good reminder, because otherwise we all have been there 2 months down the line, 3 months down the line. Oh, did that piece of content go out? And invariably it hasn't. So that's why all these things it's old school. We don't need a product to do this, just Excel and a bit of discipline. So those were essentially the top email marketing challenges that we found from our reports that we published earlier this year. The other part is really around compliance and segmentation. And compliance and segmentation there's no easy answer for this, but being able to have some visual or some manual checks on your email that you're sending out, and the ability to have some workflows around that is absolutely critical for producing, just being compliant. And then you kind of get into the world of segmentation. So segmentation brings its own challenge, because with segmentation, you're very reliant on the CRM and the marketing tools combining well with each other. So at basic level, who are your investors, who are your prospects, who are your leads, but also you've got to think about jurisdiction, and are you legitimately able to send a particular type of correspondence to them. The other part of segmentation also changes when you add marketing automation to it. So if you're a hedge fund, probably not so much, but if you're in private equity or if you're a GP, you want to be doing, constant fundraising. And if you're doing fundraising, you need to be able to build out automations on a regular basis per fundraise. So that, again, is a whole nother webinar in itself. But having the ability to have your segmentation, having compliant segmentation that feeds your marketing automation, is incredibly useful to have. And again, without having segmentation, it does stop people, actually sending out slightly more advanced emails, slightly more targeted emails. And again, it comes back to your CRM, and not having clean CRM data, or people being lazy with their CRM data and not tagging people correctly, what they should receive, what they should not receive, in itself is not a discipline issue, it's a marketing issue. And if you're marketing, if you've got garbage data, then it becomes a compliance issue as well. So, something to take very, very seriously. And again, what stops people is because a lot of it is around how seriously does your fund manager, does the owner of your fund take marketing? Is it a necessary evil, or is it core to what you're doing? So that's that part. The next thing to look at is email delivery, spam filters, and the like. So the real challenge we have with email delivery is that somebody else has to do the heavy lifting. And the reason for that is essentially it's a game of chess. You've got to have so many things lined up. You've got to have your DKIM set up, you have to manage your own IP reputation, you've got to do your own image density, you've got to manage image density, you've got to manage spoofing, you've got to manage making sure your emails are not being seen as bulk, content triggers, mixing of content, not having senders that don't exist, and also managing your bounces as well. Too many BCCs, too many CCs, images not embedded. I mean, the list goes on. And if there's any one thing that stops people sending out emails in a way that that is strategic, as opposed to just sending it out anyway, is they're just sending CCs and BCCs and just sending them out, and not really. And even if you're using other tools to send your mailing out, not managing your bounces, again, it is probably after having your IP reputation and your DKIM set up, not managing your bounces is like number one for emails not being delivered. That obviously, and spam reports. So what happens with spam reports is where people are actually marking your emails as spam, and that in itself becomes a challenge. And even worse, all of these things I mentioned are all silent bounces. So when an email is not being delivered, there comes a point where mail servers will say, you know what, we're not even going to tell you that your emails are bounced. So again, really important to being on top of your email delivery. If you're using an email product, it should be doing this. But things like managing your bounces, I can't stress how important that is. Coming on to bot traffic, I think bot traffic has its own problems, in as much as there's so much data being scraped by bots, whether they're AI bots, they're rogue bots, they're bots just doing bot things because they just want to collect data. All these things inflate your metrics, they drain your ad budget, they compromise lead quality, and also they're scraping proprietary content. The good thing is that if you're using things like Cloudflare you can actually turn off bots in there. And there's a recent agreement that a lot of these AI companies have had now, where whilst they were ignoring the robot text entry on your website, they are now going to acknowledge it. So that means they will only be able to access public areas of your website, which they were previously. They won't be doing that anymore. Again, this kind of part of the copyright element, but also hopefully it'll prevent fund materials, research reports, and insights kind of being made publicly available. So again, that's really important. If you don't want that to be let out, and you want to be 100% sure it stays in-house, is to not have it on your website, either have it in your email or have it as a link to somewhere on your investor portal. With bots, I think most email products that are out there are not filtering out bots in a clever way. They are basically looking at a bot directory, which is abuse DB, and are just using the IP addresses in there. However, where the world is right now, bots are way more sophisticated than a static IP address, a static database. So there is a cure for this that we've built. Again, not punting our product, but this is really, you've just got to be aware that with the way of bots right now, your metrics could well be inflated. So making sure you're looking for things like the same person clicking in on it a number of times. If the same email is being clicked from multiple locations, those are really good warning signs that this is potentially a bot. And as historically people used to think, oh, they've just forwarded my email internally into their organization and everybody's reading it. Probably not the case. And we use our own tool to actually look through things, and things like, LinkedIn are renowned for bots. So whatever, you have, whatever systems you're using, if you're using LinkedIn ads, be very aware. We've essentially cut our LinkedIn ad spend, mainly because we've just realized that it's just a plethora of bot traffic that nobody's filtering out. And clients that have come to us from other CRM providers have said exactly the same, is there's too much data, other marketing automation platforms, too many people, they're getting too much fake traffic coming their way, and it's just not being cleaned out. So that is a real problem. So getting to the last few minutes of the webinar, I thought, okay, what can we do? What actionable steps can people take? So I've basically broken it down into 5. Implement great delivery strategies, and deliverability really around managing your bounds, making sure people are doubly opted in. When people are entered in your CRM, they get an email saying what they're going to be receiving, having the ability to have a preference center so that people can subscribe and unsubscribe from different parts of your email content. I have to say, find a good way to integrate your CRM with your email platform, whichever one you choose to use, and make sure it's both ways. So you've got the ability to tell your email platform what people should receive and who they are, but also feed that back into the CRM so you know what people are engaging with. As a starter for 10, create a most engaged dashboard in your tool, whether it's Excel or if you venture into Power BI, do that. Create a content calendar. I think if there's any one thing that takes no effort, it's basically get an Excel spreadsheet, lay out the months, lay out the task, and just say which ones are you planning to do, and just have the done flag beside them. So that's incredibly useful. And finally, and probably the most important, that costs the least, is the ability to say, right, how do we build out a great go-to-market strategy? So what's your fund narrative? What are you doing for brand awareness? What are you doing for demand generation? And how are you measuring that? And I know it probably sounds as simple as things, but if those 3 things aren't defined, no matter what you use, it's not going to work. So hopefully I've covered these topics. Hopefully, well, I see very few people have dropped out, so thank you. So I'm more than happy to take some questions now. I've got a few coming in. One question is, what are some quick wins I can implement to improve deliverability. Again, I feel like I just told them right now, it really is around, I think the number one thing to look at is making sure your SPF and DKIM are set up and your IP reputation. And once you've done that, making sure you manage your bounces. Do segmentation strategies vary between hedge funds, private equity, and real estate managers? I think I did cover hedge funds and private equity. Real estate is pretty much the same. It's about having the clean data, the clean email delivery to build out marketing automations as you go around a fundraise. Now, whether it's real estate, whether it's infrastructure, because those funds come online more often than hedge funds, it's probably worth having that last step built in, which is your marketing automation. Okay, I've got another question. How do you measure ROI of email campaigns? Oh, kind of slightly speechless, because that could be its own webinar in itself. I think number one, I would say, is you've got to work out, if there was one thing to do, I would say how much new money have we raised, and how much money have we spent on marketing, and then take 10% of that, and then keep doing that on a regular basis. And the reason for this is because ROI is not an exact science. There is no, and I know most managers will say, well, we've spent 10K on this campaign, where's the ROI? Marketing is not that beast. You can't go and say, I'm driving a Mercedes because I went to this campaign, or a BMW or a car. There are lots of points on the way around what I mentioned earlier on, your go-to-market strategy, your brand awareness, your demand generation, your fun narrative, and finding ways to be front of mind. Because in essence, 95% of your email audience are not going to invest in you right now. Your job is to nurture those 95% and find out who the 5% are who are going to invest. So it really is, the cost really goes in nurturing that 95%, who off that only 4% or less will invest in, say, a 10-year period. So it's not that easy. It's not a B2B model, and it's not a B2C model. It's very much a B2F model, which is very, very different. So I know people would love to have that answer, that answered, but not the case. I've got another question coming here. How can we improve the outreach messaging to achieve a better response rate? I think getting a better response rate is about messaging, which you've said, and then it's really segmentation. So it's not about a pray and spray approach. It's by saying, well, we know these people are interested in us. You then move into that topic of messaging. So what messaging works, what messaging doesn't work. And the reason, weirdly, this webinar has done well, and most of our webinars do really well, is because we run ABCD testing on all our email campaigns, and basically work out which ones have performed the best, and then send everybody that content. This weirdly, this month, the ChatGPT version 1 with tweaks. Sometimes it's Claude, sometimes it's what are ones we write ourselves. It's not an exact science, but messaging is critically important. And you've just got to have various tweaks of messaging that work. And sometimes the machine wins, sometimes you win. Okay, another question has come through. How to re-engage with older leads? I think having a re-engagement campaign is really part of that. And how you build that out, what messaging you put in there is critical. And because they are lost leads, in many ways, as long as you've got a good unsubscribe and a good automation or a good sequence of emails to send to them, you'll see very quickly which one bites and which ones don't bite. And again, if any of them show interest in you, you get a 10% uptake, which 7 to 13, 14% is what the uptake we see in lost leads. That's really, really worth doing. Okay, another question's come in. Oh, somebody said thank you. That's my pleasure, Daria. A few more, another questions come in, slightly longer questions. How big is a problem AI filtering? And I think, yeah, ultimately we built a bot. Let me read the question out properly. How big a problem is bot traffic for funds? And how do you filter out the noise in your analytics? So it's a huge problem, but this problem is unknown, but we know it exists. And as I said, the best way to filter it out is to use AI to do it. And there is just one or two AI products out there that let you do it. Bot Detect AI is one of them. A lot of bigger providers are making it available. You can subscribe to the Abuse DB database. You can look at trends in your engagement. Like I said, if someone's opening the click from multiple times from multiple locations, probably a bot, you can discount that. Our product has all this stuff and AI built into it that reduces that. And that is really until, I would say this time next year. And as long as the tech bros have their say in how data is, it's going to be a battle all the way along. So unfortunately, don't have a good answer, but it will be there. You've just got to filter this stuff out, either manually or automatically. We send out a lot of fact sheets. What's the best way to make these emails feel less like regulatory spam and more like investor value? Wow, that's a great question from Anonymous. I think the way to make them feel less like regulatory spam and more investor value is not to send them what they are not invested in and not to send them multiple emails. Some of our clients do that, and that's on them. But the ones that get the most engagement use a template generator to automatically build templates with fact sheets in there that only to relate to what they're invested in. And they don't have a huge amount of branding. They don't have a huge amount of messaging. It's very factual. The data's in there, off it goes. And it almost is, even though it's not personalized to a great degree, it's personalized enough to say, I'm not getting a blanket email. I'm getting fact sheets that I'm interested in. So that is probably the personalization and automatic generation, and probably the best part of AI that you can use is where the template automatically knows what fact sheets to send somebody without any intervention. And that weirdly is built into our product that allows you to do that. We don't call any of this stuff AI. It's been there for years. It is now. So we just, we don't talk about that. Just checking if there are any more questions. There are other questions come in. And what one thing should every fund marketer should stop doing with email campaigns? I have to say, pray and spray. I think just getting your emails, blasting them out, and just being done with that. It needs thinking, it needs strategy, it needs content, it needs a go-to-market strategy. It needs all those things. And essentially, if your email marketing is just a chore that you do, and weirdly, 23 years ago, that was my job, sending out email as a chore. But then whenever I needed a pay rise, I just couldn't get one because no one saw any assets coming in, or you couldn't measure any kind of marketing attribution to email activity. So it really, with the analytics and the marketing automation that I kind of showed earlier on, which I'll quickly show you, just I'm sure everyone has remembered. With this kind of dashboard here, just having the ability for this information to be available to the sales team, this information available to the C-suite, suddenly elevates your marketing. But it has to start with having a strategy and a plan behind it, and educating people within the company that marketing isn't just about pretty PDFs or pitch decks and the like. It's a bit more involved. So just checking if we've got any more questions. No, that's it. No, a few. Yeah, the recording will be sent out. So thank you all very much. So yeah, enjoy the rest of your Friday. Thank you all for being very generous with your time. Thank you for all the questions. I hope you all found it useful. Goodbye for now.